Good morning.
Good morning.
Friday, November the 5th, 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm calling the special meeting of the Board of Directors of the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation to order. At this time, do we have any public comments?
No, ma'am, we do not.
All right, thank you. Today is actually a workshop session, but we do have some business to take care of in our open meeting first. And so the regular business presentations, we're really going to start with 3.2, which is the discussion and possible action on a resolution R 2021-0015, approving funds for expansion of infrastructure in the Bastrop Business and Industrial Park, and authorizing a budget amendment as required in an amount not to exceed $1 million. So I'm going to turn this over to Janora. We've had some meetings with MOCA. Whoa. I'll tone it down a little bit. We've had some meetings with MOCA, and we have some adjustments to the agreement. Mm-hmm. It will, we're going to start with 3.2, Colin, just because that'll help clarify 3.1. This has to do with access to the property and an extension of Jackson Street and a wraparound on the south side. As we look at the map, it will coincide with a previous discussion that we had about wrapping around the south side as part of the infrastructure for the rest of the industrial park, the phase 2. So I'll turn it over to Janora to go through some more of the details, and then we'll discuss more in detail what this ask is.
Okay, and I want to clarify too that we do not have the engineer's report at this time. They are working on information. The $1 million is an estimate, and it includes $200,000 that remains from the 2013 bond for infrastructure improvements in the park relating to Jamco and also to Main Street improvements. So the $1 million includes that, and then an estimated $800,000 for what you see on the map, the extension of Jackson South, and then to the east. And the map you're looking at is the zoning concept scheme proposed by the board, which y'all approved at your last meeting, and is now in front of the city planning department for their review, and then should go before P&Z for their consideration before it goes to city council. What we are asking for in this these funds, and that is also, this item is also going before council on Tuesday of next week for their consideration. We're asking not for the budget amendment at this moment, but their approval, council's approval for us, the EDC, to invest in infrastructure improvements in the park, which is an agreement, something that we've looked at for a long time with the city, and addresses several factors. One, which is what you see, the extension of Jackson Street, and then to the east, a proposed east-west ingress-egress eventually for the park. And Mr. Gossett, please feel free to jump in at any moment, or Jean. In doing so, in building out this infrastructure, you not only create the access from the southern portion of the MOCA property, which is the triangle you see. Jean, could you point that out? Thank you. That triangle. But if you'll notice to the south, that would give us access to lots 2 and 3, which are part of the EDC's property we own south of MOCA. So in developing out this infrastructure, you open up at least 3 properties there, correct?
Yeah, just to clarify, it opens access to lots 3 and 4.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. It'll also get to 2.
Well, I think most importantly and probably most significantly, it gets us over the gas pipeline.
Right.
And we can understand the remainder of the infrastructure and how it's going to work once we get over the gas line, because that's been the hurdle all these years. And so that really opens up the entire southern part of the park for infrastructure and access.
Do you all have any questions on?
I would like to make a request that this map be an exhibit to the resolution, because really it's $800,000 in one page that says infrastructure. And if I'm the MOCA project, I would like to know that $800,000, where it's going, because as best that I can read it, it's in the park, and we know what we're talking about now, but if you're just looking at this piece of paper, you can't tell where that infrastructure is.
Yes, ma'am, we plan to include that, thank you. And we do plan to include that for Tuesday's presentation. And I believe if it's all right, I think I'll address this now. In our meetings with MOCA, we discussed that they would pay a portion of the improvements, their pro rata portion of the improvements in the park. And that would then require an amendment to our performance agreement between the EDC and MOCA Ventures LLC, so that in the reimbursement currently, in our current performance agreement, it states that the EDC will reimburse them $900,000 once their commitment is met in the build out of their buildings, and we can reimburse them less at the time they finish their portion of the build out on their property, because that would then include their portion of the development of this infrastructure. I hope I made that's clear.
Do we need to identify the portion that we will be allocating to that? Is it and if not, can you give us an idea of what you think an estimated percentage or portion is? Is it 20%, 10%, 80%?
I believe what we discussed was 20%, but I want to make sure that other parties in the meeting understood that as well.
Yeah.
I just want to
And-
clarify, I appreciate that you said it'll be included.
Yes, ma'am.
But I don't want it included in the backup. I want it as Exhibit A in the resolution. And that may be what you meant, but there's not an exhibit referenced at all, so it may require a little bit of wordsmith. It's easy, super easy to do, but I'm not wanting it to be a random piece of paper that happened to be in a packet. I'm wanting it to be attached to the resolution, just
Okay.
for clarity for everyone.
Thank you for clarifying. Angela, can we make that happen? And can we provide that, Mayor, at the meeting?
Sure.
City Council is an updated.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's what we will do. And we will also, if it will help, we would have a slide as well for the presentation so that the public could also see this map.
Exactly. I mean,
Okay.
we have several page documents for $50,000, and we have less than a page for $800,000. I'd just like us to be consistent with what expectations are for future, because all kinds of things happen, and then we've had 2 workshops of history, and it's hard to go back and dig through history when things aren't documented clearly.
Correct.
So that's the purpose of the request.
And we're happy to oblige that request.
Thank you.
Also, I believe we would consider this, because the board discussed at your last board meeting that we remove the references to phases in the park. So this would actually be not necessarily phase 1, but step 1 in the build out of infrastructure and making future properties what we consider shovel ready. So we are trying to avoid the language phases, because that has confused a lot of us throughout this process. Phase refers to a lot of different things by different organizations, so we're trying to remove that.
Yeah, I think on the printed copy that you have there, like we use the word for section instead of phase of the infrastructure for the southern part.
So do we have any questions?
I do want to point out that when you're looking at this map, this is a small piece of a larger process that we're going through right now in order to establish the industrial park as an EC or
Correct.
employment center, because that also will be coming up for a public hearing in the request of rezoning that P2 piece into EC. So these are overlaying projects,
Yes.
all of which we are moving forward on a timeline that coincides with MOCA and coincides with the city
Yes.
in order to make this a successful project.
Correct.
And in order to move forward with the infrastructure on the industrial park.
That is correct, and this is a partnership between the city and the EDC. We are all very excited about the MOCA project, and we are all working to keep the project on track and moving forward. Do you have any questions?
And maybe just one more comment.
Certainly.
The amount that is being requested is not a firm amount, but we have provided that amount in hopes that, of course, that it might be even less than that amount.
Correct.
The initial discussion was much lower, but after review by the engineers and taking into consideration the water and the electricity, et cetera,
And supply chain.
and the supply chain, we're kind of covering our bases. It kind of went from 500 a linear square foot to 900 a linear square foot, but I think that's linear foot. Squares in my head. Thank you. You can tell I'm not an engineer. But I am trying to keep my facts straight and making sure that everybody is on the same page about what we're trying to do.
Yeah, one of the bigger challenges in regards to what that cost value is going to be is the wastewater aspect of it. Because of the gas pipeline and us not knowing the true depth of it, and the topography is whether or not we're going to have to install a lift station on that southeastern portion. And you know, as you can all imagine, that's not a simple, inexpensive task. So that really could drive a cost value one way or the other. And so we wanted to make sure that we allotted enough budget to cover any and all challenges that may be forthcoming in that first little component of that roadway.
And then one further clarification. What we're asking for is council approval to expend funds. But to clarify, the $800,000 will require a budget amendment. That request will go before City Council in December when the Finance Department brings all the budget amendments that they're recommending at that time. So this is our effort to be proactive, make the council aware, keep everyone aware, and to seek council's approval so that they may ask questions and we can provide answers before we actually get to a budget amendment in December.
So your agenda says $1 million and your resolution says 800,000, but your intention is for the resolution to be 800,000.
For the budget amendment, it will be 800,000. This 1 million includes 200,000 of a bond that is remaining from
I
2013.
understand. I just don't think 3.2 reads that way, because it says a budget amendment as required in an amount not to exceed $1 million. And I'm hearing you say that the budget amendment is for the $800,000. And I don't care, it doesn't matter. I just want to make sure that the resolution that we're approving is correct, so that whoever makes a motion doesn't make a motion based on 3.2, which is the wrong amount.
Okay.
So, Janora, if you'll recall, we made that change right at the very end of putting the agenda together because we thought it might be best to have it match what was going to go before City Council, and that you would speak to the difference in the 200,000 versus the 800,000. But I don't disagree with the mayor. I think we should change the resolution to match. Since
Okay.
we have to make some changes to it anyway.
Okay.
It just makes sense.
Okay. Are you comfortable with that, Mayor Schrader?
Yeah, I just don't want us to have to meet again because we didn't approve the right words.
Okay. Mr. Plunkett, did you have questions?
No, I just wanted to say, I mean, I think it's great that we're finally crossing the pipeline, and it's opens up, you know, quite a bit more property to being shovel-ready, and just as long as, so, just want to understand, we're gonna amend the resolution to say 1 million instead of the 800,000, and also add language to refer to the map as an exhibit.
Correct.
Okay? Well, if that's the case, I will move with those amendments to approve resolution 2021-0015.
I second the amendment.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. All those opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Which brings us to 3.1, which we've already referenced in this discussion. Discussion and possible action on amending the BEDC's performance agreement with Mocha Ventures Nebraska, LLC. Do you want to just specifically go over that change in the, it's very minor change in the performance agreement?
One is that it clarifies the property, which will include below LCRAs, or will include LCRA's easements, so that the easement can be fenced in but accessible by LCRA on the Mocha property. Correct, Jean?
Yeah, so the original layout of the easements along the LCRA right-of-way or easement line were off. They actually built outside of their own easements, and so we just took this opportunity, since we were surveying and replatting this area, to go ahead and clean those lines up with and on behalf of Mocha. And so we went ahead and cleaned those lines up and squared those in with an updated survey from our first one, and it was no additional cost value to that. The survey company went in and did that for us, and we now have a clean lined survey with easements all in where they're supposed to be.
And then the other amendment is to extend the feasibility period to on or before January 7, 2022.
And one other question, once the road is built in, the infrastructure road that we're talking about, will the property from Mocha then extend to the north side of that road? Or,
The road, between the PUE and the roadway, so the public utility easement and then the roadway itself, it should butt up to their property line, because that new LCRA easement line, in a sense, that survey line is now on that southern portion. So all of that should technically, if all goes well, which, you know, horseshoes and hand grenades, that all should come in line with each other, so they should be able to turn directly in and have their private drive going into
and
their
get across
property.
those easements, get
Correct.
across the
Yes,
right-of-ways?
which, you know, again, we've had those conversations with them. They've got to secure all of that on their own to have access through the LCRA easement as well as the pipeline easement to get on and off their property.
So they are not buying any land that's required. You have enough land for the right-of-way, it will all be south of their property line.
Yes, ma'am. that
And
is
I also
the
heard you
goal.
say that there is some action for LCRA to take as well.
Yes.
In regards to,
I would think accepting a new easement and access and things that don't necessarily involve us.
yes, that is correct. And our understanding through this process with MoCA is they are the ones that will be taking that to LCRA, not us.
Correct.
And so is that the only two things that are changing, or there's one more? Because I thought we're clarifying the property with LCRA easement, you're extending the period, and then aren't you also discussing reimbursement for their portion of the road?
That's in our performance agreement, yes. The reimbursement will be amended in that. And Charlie could not be here today. He's ill, so he apologized. But that would be included in our performance agreement, which does not require us to go back before city council because we will be reimbursing less, not more than the
Yeah,
$900,000.
That's fine. I'm just asking if that is also included in the amendment of the performance agreement we're voting on today, or if that's going to be in the future.
That would be involved in today's amendment. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so then I would like to suggest, because I think 20% and the only map that we have is this one, and we don't know, I would think at this point, these are still lines that aren't surveyed yet.
Correct.
And the
That is
only,
correct.
the only distance that we're referencing is this one line on this one piece of paper. And normally, people's fair share is 50% of the cost of the roadway. And as Mr. Gossett pointed out, it's not 50% of the entire roadway. It would be 50% to the east. And so I think for clarity, it would be a good idea to say their reimbursement portion is 50% of, if we know that's 50 feet, 70 feet, whatever it is, instead of trying to do it as a percentage of a total project that's not well-defined at this point. Because what we don't want is to set a precedent of, well, MoCA only paid 20% when our expectation and what we've done in the past is that people pay 50% of the road that supports their project. And of course, that doesn't, the whole point, and I appreciate that we're trying to get to the place that all the roads are built and they're shovel ready, and we aren't talking about your reimbursement because the roads are already there. But I just would like us to be consistent, so I'd like us to consider doing, and Mr. Gossett, I don't know if you have a length that you want to recommend, or if we want to say minimum linear feet required for access, or east of the cul-de-sac right away to the first driveway, or however you guys want to define that. I think that might be a cleaner way of looking at it. Just a suggestion.
Madam Chair, do you?
It does make sense. I think it's in the language specifying not what I'd say the guidelines for how we're going to establish the cost as opposed to the cost or the exact percentage. So if we could say that their percentage of the length or the linear portion,
Southern portion.
that's 50%, because it's important, I think, also to be consistent with your language. But I think we can put it into the performance agreement in a way that it matches the way we would do it with anybody else.
Okay, staff will speak with our attorney on Monday and clarify that. Is the board comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Using that specific language of 50% of the linear feet of that east-west?
I think the way the mayor stated it in terms of 50% of the cost to the first driveway to the north to enter MoCA.
and I
No,
bel-
the driveways to the north.
Well, I was thinking
It's-
the northern driveway east.
Because there may be other roads that go along, but all I'm saying is until the first northern driveway. If MoCA wants, if they start opening a second or third driveway, that's different. But you're taking the 50% to the first driveway entrance to MoCA.
I believe we have an example of exactly what Mayor Schrader is discussing in our agreement with Jamco. So we'll try to build some of that language, talk to Charlie and make sure that we've got everything in it that we need to make sure it is accurate and consistent with what everyone is discussing here today to make sure that we kind of cover that bounds and define that space. So from where it currently ends today at the end of Jackson Street to their portion of where they're going to connect on that northern eastern side.
Is that clear enough for everyone?
It feels a little awkward to be approving an agreement where we don't have the verbiage, so we'll have to be, maybe we take a few minutes break and you guys look at some Jamco stuff and maybe we put some words. I know we don't have Charlie here and we can't finalize it, but we would want the motion to be really clear and then let Charlie put the final review on it, and then but this performance agreement's not going to council, right? So this is
Correct.
the
That is
last time
correct.
that, so should we maybe, based on that, Madam Chair, maybe we delay this till the 15th at our regular meeting, and then we have an opportunity to review the whole performance agreement, and we're voting on a final document.
I think staff is fine with that if the board is.
I think that's fine. That's 10 days from now. We can get the wording. This is not holding anything up on our timeline, which is critical. The extension of the date to January 7th, I just want to point that out, has to do with there are still some moving pieces on the MOCA side that need to be accomplished. And so it seemed a little bit of a time crunch. So we extended that date so that in the event that they're unable to, a done deal is never a done deal until you have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. So there are still a lot of moving pieces on this, and that was the extension for that date so that they could accomplish that and feel comfortable before, they move forward.
Correct.
Well, I make a motion that we table item 3.1 until our next regular board meeting.
I'm not even sure we need a motion. We can just do it, correct? You do need a motion. Do I have a second?
Second that.
All those approve?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. 3.3, discussion and possible action on Resolution 2021-0016, authorizing the BEDC Executive Director, Secretary, Treasurer to execute all documents required for the sale of the building of 921 Main Street, including the representation agreement with Marcus and Milchap and all closing documents. This is resolution, okay. Okay. Who's going to address this one? Janora? Okay.
And we do have a guest here today. Joseph Longo with Marcus and Millichap is with us and able to answer any questions you may have. The agreement, or what you see in front of you, actually came to us, then went to our attorney, who made several red lines on that. We then returned that to Marcus and Millichap. They accepted all red lines by our attorney. And so you have in front of you the final document for execution for 921 Main. And it's my understanding that once the agreement is signed and returned to Marcus and Millichap, within 45 days, they anticipate the call for offers. Is that correct, Joseph? And would you like to, I'm going to ask, you can have a seat right here. I'm going to ask Joseph to address any questions y'all may have. I think you have to turn it on. There you go.
It's a pleasure, y'all. Thank you for choosing us and working with us. So I did kind of write down the timeline a little bit more clear. So if we execute it today, right, today is the 5th of November. Keep going. Is that better? I can try. So if today's November 5th, the timeline that I anticipate this going is the following. We will set a call for offers, the date, as Mr. Gossett mentioned in your last meeting. That's the last date that people are going to be able to submit. So it would be a 40-day process. So if today is the 5th, it would end the December 15th. I don't want to push it too far past that, because with the holidays and everything, people are going to start to, get on vacation. So that'll give us another 5 days out of that 45 for us to go over every single offer, make sure it makes sense, and then choose one to go with. Typical at that point, once we accept the offer, we'll go back on contract with those people, and then we'll go under contract. That typically takes a week or so, maybe even longer, depending on what we go back and forth on. After that, a typical single tenant building in this market today will typically undergo a feasibility period where they're doing their due diligence inspection for about 30 days, 30 to 45 days. If there's financing, that might get pushed out for the closing period, so 30 to 45 days for the feasibility, and then the closing period is anywhere from 15 to 30 days. Hopefully the offer we get is not contingent on financing, which means we can close it quicker. So all in all, so 45 days to get assigned upon LOI, a week or two to go back and forth on the contract, and then another 75 days at the very most in this marketplace, at the very most, to get it closed. So that's kind of around 105, 120 days. The representation agreement you see before you is for 180 days. And one point of clarification that was not made last time was if we go under contract on day 45, and if the contract falls out, the representation and marketing of that agreement, we start on day 46. So we have another 140 days, or 135, excuse my math, to represent this on the open market. So again, if it falls out on day 45, or if we go under contract on day 45, that contract falls out for whatever reason, per the representation agreement, I still have 135 or 134 days to continue the marketing process to go find another buyer, if that makes sense.
So the clock stops when we accept a contract
Yes, sir.
and may start back up again upon the termination of that contract.
Correct. Yes, sir.
So we don't just fall back to, maybe our second choice of offer?
Oh, we absolutely
okay.
can. That is entirely a possibility.
So what I'm hearing you say is you're real interested in getting that building sold, and if the first deal falls through, we don't have to restart everything. We continue the
No, ma'am.
negotiations and get that building sold.
No, ma'am. Yeah, we can, and it really is up to y'all at the point. If the market has changed so much that we can, I know money's not the motivation. If there's something else that comes up that would be best for us to go back to, okay. Well, if money's the motivation, the market goes even crazier, then we can try it. We can try it again and do a little marketing process. If nothing comes up, we'll go ask the offers again. We've done that several times before. Exactly. There's very much backup plans.
Well, my big question was, I noticed a price on the contract, and I didn't think we were going to put a price on thought we were going to request for bid.
We can.
We didn't want to, the reason we didn't want to price, if I can speak for the board, hopefully, is that, we didn't want to muddy the water one way or the other. We've got a lot of cost into this building that
Sure.
really didn't become part of the building, mitigation for neighbors and things like that. And
Okay.
then on the other hand, the market has kind of gone crazy, so we didn't feel comfortable at setting a price. So we have a price in our mind, but we'd rather not have that in the public.
Okay. So what we can do is the following, and I pitched this before. We can, on the representation agreement, there's that 2.65 million, but what we can change that to is a strike price of 2.65, unpriced with the strike price of that, which means on the materials that are on the market, there will not be a price. Now, if someone calls me and asks me, I'll tell them, but it won't be out to the public. And people do that for a number of reasons. In y'all's case, what y'all want to do, some people do it so the tax man doesn't come after them. With the market going crazy. So there's different types of reasons to do that, but yes, we can absolutely make that change, and it's a very quick change.
Okay, any more questions? Discussion? Do we have a motion? It does need to be redacted from the,
Yeah, we'll the press, yeah, absolutely. We'll fix it.
okay. All right. I'll entertain a motion. Maybe we're not having one today. Think we should.
Let's see, I'll move to approve resolution, it was 16, right? R 2021-0016, with the redaction as noted.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
All those approve? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you for coming today.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Nice to meet you.
All right, I'll go get an offer, y'all.
Thanks.
Do we sign the documents before we leave? Mr. Gossett wants to know where his documents. Yeah, where am I supposed to sign?
Oh, gosh. Okay, so, yeah, moving on. That feels good to get that piece out of here. So we are now going to close the open session and go into a workshop session at 9:35. Got our official business out of the way. And 4.1 has 3 different items that we're going to workshop today. So number 1, we're going to go ahead and remove that from the agenda because our representative on the Toad habitation is unable to make it today, but there is information downloaded in the Dropbox for you to review. We've talked a lot about it. I think the information will help with any clarifications. We appreciate Carrie always being on call for us, but we will not be having that presentation today by Carrie Croft. The next item is number 2, is discussion regarding the current status and supply and demand of the local labor force and workforce development. So this is a presentation that I know Angela and Jean have been working on for quite some time. I'm looking forward to getting the information. Just for clarification for the board, this is a workshop. What are you looking for from us today? Are you looking for a solution, a resolution? What is it that we need to pay particular attention to? Because it's a workshop and we're going to need to dig down deep and come up with, I'm assuming, some sort of solution.
Yes, ma'am. I think today is, really opening up the discussion. What can we as a board and as an organization and as Bastrop, what can we come up with that is different than what the national market is doing in regards to encouraging people coming back to work at every level, whether that be the service industry or the metalworks industry or the manufacturing industry. Everyone is struggling right now. We've heard from the chamber, we've heard from Visit Bastrop, we've heard from some of our own company employers locally about
Some
the
of our own
struggle.
board members.
Yeah, and some of our own board members, definitely in in-depth conversations about how do we change this. And I think the presentation is really going to give you not only a local view, but also a very, in a sense, global view of what we've been able to find, and then how do we take that information and maybe build something that is unique to us as a community to help encourage people to get back to work. So I think that's where we need the guidance. We need the expertise from Jen and from Kevin and from everybody at the table. Really, anybody's voice is open to be heard today for suggestions and concepts and ideas.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be, we don't have to come up with a conclusion today.
Correct.
We just wanted to put these thoughts in your mind. Here's what we've seen, here's what we're doing, and here are our current challenges. So let's think outside the box and do a little brainstorming and figure out how we can help face the challenges we have here locally better than anybody else has been able to do it so far. We're thinking grassroots, just out-of-the-box ideas.
Absolutely.
And I know we met with Jen already. She's got some really good thoughts. So
And also, really understanding the tools that we have in our current toolbox. Is there something else out there that somebody might be aware of that we don't have, that we can access, that will help enhance what we're already using, doing, or accessing? So any guidance would be much appreciated.
Okay, then I'll turn it over to you on a day that we got workforce numbers nationally. There's an uptick. Looks like it's a great time for people to go back to work according to the data that they presented nationally. Let's look and see what we can do locally.
Thank you. So we're going to talk again. We're going to go across the board. So bear with us as we go through the information. But again, we just want to kind of show the overall picture. The state of Texas is a collaboration of community colleges. We are currently, Bastrop County is located in the ACC service area. And as you can see from this map, these are all of the different college districts and the community college taxing districts. And the difference between the two maps are the ones that are the district service areas and then the actual taxing districts that are currently in place. And as you can see, those are very, very different. Excuse me.
Jean, are you going to speak to the legislation?
I can. We were not going to go that deep, but we definitely can. So I will do it at a high level because I'm versed, but definitely not in depth.
Well, I mean,
versed.
honestly, it can be like it's a sentence. Instead of, as long as ACC was promising to do it, you couldn't do it. And now there's legislation that gets them on a timeline that if they don't deliver it, there's a...
Correct. And, prior to that, the way for us to remove ourselves from the taxing district was to literally have a legislative vote. And it had to come from our school district, not from us. And meaning us as a community, it had to come from the school district. And so in the past, Bastrop ISD has a great relationship with ACC. And so we wanted to balance how we did that. So as we get through this, you'll see that we got creative. But yes, now there have been some changes. There's now kind of a shot clock, if you may. And so I'm hoping that will start encouraging some more engagement, involvement, and options and opportunities from ACC. Yes, and
TSTC is really
yes.
the point because it's the specific classes that they would promise they'll do welding. They didn't get around to us, and then we still don't have any welding classes, but TSTC's dying to do welding, and now the legislation allows that to happen. So that legislation that just was enacted not very long ago at all completely changes the landscape for vocational training.
Yes, ma'am. So back in 2010, AC was on the ballot for a campus in, I believe, 5 locations throughout their service district. Bastrop and Elgin being here in Bastrop County. Elgin's passed and Bastrop's did not.
Sorry, so, with that said, just for background, what happened to Elgin? They launched this campus, it's running great and fantastic, and we're behind? Or?
But Mr. Gossett, there's folks in the community that say they live in Bastrop and not in Elgin because they're not paying the ACC tax. So that's the trade-off.
Correct.
You pay the tax or you don't. And this community said, we don't want, and if you think back in 2010, compared to all the other taxes they were paying, they weren't willing to take on the additional tax.
Yes,
so when the community speaks, that's
right.
That's how it works.
So the trade-off from a student perspective for that is the students that live here pay out-of-district fees to attend campus there, which is typically about double to triple what the students in Elgin pay.
Okay. As they did when they leave Bastrop and went to ACC in Austin?
Correct.
So no difference from there, they're both 30 minutes away?
Absolutely.
How many enrollments are in the Elgin?
Well, I don't know that off of the top of my head, but I do know that they have, I believe, doubled the size of that campus since they built it.
Okay.
And added, I think, 3 or 4 additional associate's degree programs.
But they
But-
have some pretty specific programs.
Yes.
But for years, people have been coming from Bastrop to Austin for ACCs, even to cover college credits.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
And I can speak to, we have Circa, who takes a bus to Elgin every day to take kids to take classes at ACC.
And they're not paying, because if they're doing it as a
Correct.
high school student, then
Well-
their parents are not paying the tax,
Right.
and their kids are getting ACC courses.
Right, our school district is paying.
That is correct.
Right.
Yep, the school district pays for it, which they used to receive a kind of a stipend from ACC for those classes. That is no longer available to them. They are paying full price tuition. Yes.
Which again is why I thought, I didn't know how we could have this conversation without talking about the legislation, because that's such a huge change to what we've done. So that was why I brought it up.
Mayor, we were trying to be respectful of everybody's time today, and since we only had 3 hours.
Well, we're going back to 2010. I thought we could talk about
I know,
2021.
I know. So here we go. Okay. So with all of that being said, how do we create opportunity, right? We don't have a campus. We don't have a additional education kind of pathway beyond high school. How do we start creating partnerships and opportunities beyond that to develop the future of our workforce and our staffing?
And Jane, correct me if I'm misremembering this, but they're not allowed by state law to build a campus here without us passing the tax,
That is
right? They would
correct.
be using somebody else's tax money for that.
That is correct.
Okay, so we've been trying to figure out a way to work with them without the campus.
Correct.
Okay.
Or encourage a university such as an A&M, UT, Texas Tech. I'm not getting on anybody's particular side because I'm definitely an Aggie, but that would also drive opportunity, because then they could bring their community, their community college or extension with them.
Those campuses are all over the place.
So in 2014, the BEDC worked with the Bastrop Chamber of Commerce and Bastrop ISD to create kind of the other side of it, which is supporting the actual educators. How do we encourage them, build their morale, and keep them excited about teaching our children and creating our future workforce? Engaging in those conversations about what they can do inside the classroom to change the message, add value to what tomorrow brings for the students. So we created, we believe in BISD. So every year, every campus is visited by a group of business partners, the Chamber of Commerce, the BEDC, and numerous others, to tell every one of our educators from every level, thank you. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for doing and being who you are, and giving them a big shout out and a pat on the back. And that is still going strong today. The BEDC does sponsor 2 schools. We typically do try to focus on the high schools, since that's our immediate next workforce opportunity, and just build those relationships with the CTE teachers and educators that work in those particular areas. The BEDC also in 2015 worked with their partners, and I keep kind of referencing that, but I do want to kind of spell that out a little bit. I don't really do that through the presentation, I apologize, but we do work with the Bastrop Chamber. We work with Bastrop ISD. We work with the Workforce Solutions Rural Capital Area. We also work with TWC, which is the Texas Workforce Commission, and many, many numerous industry partners on all of the things we do workforce related. The Bastrop Youth Career Day has been a major part of us building that future example. It went from being more of a trade show type atmosphere where you open the doors, kind of push the clock, the kids have 2 hours to go and get a stamp from every vendor, and didn't really engage. And so myself and Angela kind of sat back and went, okay, this doesn't work. They're not learning anything. Should I wait? Bill's like, no, keep going. And so we sat back, restructured, and we would pick up the telephone and call every industry that we were inviting and explain to them, I don't want you just to show up. What are you going to provide that engages the student that walks by your booth? How are they going to connect what they're learning in the classroom today with what you as a company offer them tomorrow? We've had some really cool outcomes from that. People like Jamco, who actually went into their glass formulation book and found an algebra formula that they use at the high school level. They highlighted it, made it bold, stuck it on their table, and went, I bet you know what this is, and it got the kids' attention. They went, we're learning that right now. That's what we needed. We needed that connection and that creator of conversation. And so we took that, and we've built it over the years. And we've, again, worked with the ISD on identifying, and the industry in identifying, is it best for us to use or encourage the 10th and 11th graders to attend, or is it better for us to encourage the juniors and seniors? Have we already lost the seniors by the time we have our youth career day? Are they already deciding, or have they already decided what they want to do? Because we're typically mid-April, mid to late April by the time we have our youth career day. They're graduating in a month and a half. Have they already made all of those decisions? And so we've played around with it. We've done it both ways. After we've done the 10th and 11th grade concept, many of the employers came back to us and said, nah, we really want the juniors and seniors. But I will tell you, moving forward, I don't know that that's going to be the case anymore. I think our current environment is changing so much that we need to get back in front of a lot of our younger youth. And quite frankly, we really need to be driving it into our middle school, which is something we've wanted to do for a really long time. We just haven't had the capacity to get there. So with that being said, our Youth Career Day program, I believe, has been very successful. I think we're going to have to look at revamping it and reevaluating it and restructuring it as we move forward. I will say that through the pandemic, well, let me talk to this real quick. In 2017, the BEDC won the Texas Economic Development Workforce Excellence Award for the program, as well as that same year winning the International Economic Development Award for Human Capital, and we won the Silver Award, which is basically second place. But from an international standpoint, that was the first time we had really done anything at that level. Out of that, the BEDC was asked to participate in a roundtable panel discussion about workforce development within the high school environment and to share our program. So I flew to Atlanta and did that on behalf of the BEDC. Again, partnerships. We had the opportunity to have Julian Alvarez, the commissioner of the Texas Workforce Commission, come and actually speak to the students. The mayor has always been a welcome sight to the kids and encouraging them to really think outside the box and don't follow the norm. Go be yourself, and encouraging the students to get out and experience the change. And so our partnerships, and this gentleman right here is Paul Fletcher, who is in charge of the workforce rule capital area solutions. I just totally said that all wrong, but all of those WRS letters. So really quick, hang on before this starts. Okay. Yep. Okay.
So in the interest of time, we've got a couple of videos. They're both cut for time, but you can watch this next one on our YouTube page. Is that where it's available?
It's
over 5 minutes long. We didn't think y'all
yes,
wanted
and it's also
to
on our
watch it,
Facebook
so
page
it has been cut.
Yep. So really quick, just to kind of give you, this is super brief, but this is Commissioner Alvarez's statement after he spoke at our Youth Career Day. Nope. There it is.
For having something like a career day, not a job fair for the students, I love it. I love the fact that these individuals right here are looking at the future, and you have collaborated and you have been able to get folks from industry here today and our workforce boards here today, our workforce board here today, and getting higher ed and EDCs and people that represent the trades. I love that, and it's a true testament to your leadership. I'd also like to say that what you've done today should be replicated in other parts of the state. So continue to the great work you're doing, and you certainly have our commitment.
Okay, so I don't want to click back on that because it'll play over again, but his statement about replication, I've had the opportunity to work with the ISD and have been invited to numerous online presentations through the pandemic with the CTET, which is the Career and Technology Education of Texas, the bigger board. And many of the high schools, many of the school districts in general, have a hard time understanding the partnership aspect. And it's something, kind of I guess a code, if you may, that we collectively as an organization have been able to kind of break. And when myself and Martha Chabot with the Rural Workforce Solutions team, when we were both asked, how did that happen? And it was literally not taking no for an answer, pushing people beyond their bounds. And I think in our current situation, from a global workforce concept, we're going to have to use that. We're going to have to use that push of just because we haven't done it that way in the past doesn't mean we can't start that way today. And how do we get there? And bringing the right people to the table to say yes. So back to kind of where everybody is. So I know we had a little bit of a discussion about this, but currently now, Bastrop ISD does offer dual credits with ACC. I just kind of put a definition and for some reason it cut off the top part. I apologize about that. But they do offer those at the Cedar Creek High School as well as the Bastrop High School. And then they also implemented in 2014 the early college campus, the Colorado River Collegiate Academy. And with this program, again, kind of pushing the edge a little bit, this campus has been used as an example in other areas, and so it is a growing and developing program. Basically, the students can come in and they graduate with a high school diploma as well as an associate's degree. In 2018, they had 48 students complete the program for the first time and had their first graduating class. Very exciting for that program to go through that and have that happen. And I believe has really encouraged other students to apply for that campus.
What are the type of associate's degrees that they're earning?
He was going to ask me that. So
well,
funny.
most of your associate's degrees tend to be generic. It's your general ed education, so it takes care of really your first 2 years of college. The benefit of approaching it from that perspective is you tend to reduce if you're transferring into A&M or any of the state schools, your costs as far as your student loans and things like that are minimized. In addition to that, they've been indoctrinated into a college or collegiate process, and they tend to perform better at school. You've heard the freshman year where everybody goes and parties. These students don't tend to have that.
That's right.
So they tend to be more engaged in the college experience and actually graduate on time. So it's a really decent program. My question is this a private academy? No?
So students have to apply and they have to qualify.
Okay.
So they go through an application process, an interview process, and then a selection process, which again, that in itself is such an awesome life skill to go through that process as a student, especially at the 8th grade level, because that's when they're doing it. And they're doing it, in conjunction with their parents, which I would love to get Kevin to kind of speak up a little bit, because he definitely has some knowledge about this. But it is a selection process. And in the beginning, a lot of people thought that it was a certain group of students that were being selected, and that's not the case at all. Anyone can apply. Typically, you're looking at students who are first-generation American, first-generation college-bound student, but you also have numerous other areas of interest that the campus is accepting and bringing on board as well. Maybe a student that didn't have mentally, right, did not have the hopes of going to college, really struggled in the day-to-day high school life or school life, and just never felt confident enough that they would ever have the chance to go. So maybe they were a low C student because they just weren't fitting in and doing their thing. They are also accepted into the academy as well. So
I have another question. You mentioned that the 2018 had only 48 students. Is the expectation that they're going to double or triple that? Because with a community of 10,000, that's not a really good representation of what's feeding what sounds like a great program.
Sure, they started out the very first year with just a freshman class. And I believe, Kevin, maybe you can help me, I believe that was only 30 students. And then they added as they moved along, and I believe each grade level now is 60. Is that what the cap is?
They're around 80.
80? Okay,
That's
so
where they're
that's
capping
increased,
out.
yeah.
And of course, they
240,
always
that's
lose
right.
some students over the course of especially the first year, because it is a rigorous program. I've always said the biggest difference between high school and college is, the responsibility. In high school, it's the teacher's responsibility to teach the students. In college, it's the student's responsibility to learn. And it hits them right between the eyes. And it hits most people right between the eyes their freshman year. But it really, at that age, coming out of 8th grade, and really it hits them their sophomore year here, because what it does, they transition. The first year is almost all high school classes taught there on campus. And in the second year, they do Tuesday, Thursday is at ACC, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday is, and then they flip that their junior year, and then their senior year is almost all ACC. So it's a great program. It really
Yeah,
is.
The Generation Citizen is very active at Circa, and I have spoken to every year I go and speak to several of those classes, and I also, there's one particular teacher that I get interviewed by the 9th graders every year, and it's another caliber of questions. The issue is, and I'll speak to it from the other side, because you just can't cover all the bases. There's only so many hours in the day. I have a granddaughter that was accepted and didn't go because she wanted to play soccer. And she was a freshman on the varsity soccer team, and that or go to school, so that's what life is making choices, and that's, that's kind of how that all falls out. But there are kids that would love to be in the Circa environment, but you can't do that and do the athletics. There's just not enough hours in the day.
Well, and that's a concern as well, because depending on the schools that you want to get accepted into, they are looking for exterior. If you want to be a veterinarian, you better start volunteering in middle school because of the number of hours that they require. And so sports, to balance out academics, means that you're better rounded as an individual. So in some ways, they're coming in at a deficit, even though it's a great program, without some extracurricular piece to it. Now, you could introduce other styles of extracurricular, think math club, science club, and things like that. But again, with the college admissions, they're looking for more than just academics anymore.
Well, I would, and Kevin has personal experience with it, but to Jean's point, that's why it's really important that the parents are involved in the discussion, because, personally, I got a letter from a university that said that my son could have a four-year full ride scholarship, and he was like, I'm not sure I want to visit there. It's like, oh dude, get in the car, we're visiting there, right? And that's where he ended up going. So there's financial impacts, there's ability there, and for some folks, those 2 years of those preliminary classes, and not all students who start at big schools their freshman and sophomore year make it to their junior and senior year. And so being able to do that from a financial aspect, I mean, it's awesome. And to your point, I think the I know for sure the principal and several of the teachers are well aware of that fact, and so they try to provide opportunities for the kids to get those volunteer and other experiences, because they're all interested in getting them into the best schools.
Any other questions? So in 2021, kind of to, again, talk about what BISD is doing, and in conjunction with partnerships. The BEDC, as well as numerous industry within the community, came together and wrote support letters for BISD to apply for the PTech grant with TEA. They were awarded that grant, and that grant is going to help allow BISD to implement a manufacturing development program. And my understanding at this point in time, they have not solidified all of the details of where that's going to be implemented, but my understanding at this point in time is that will be implemented in the Cedar Creek High School campus. And ultimately, we will be collectively looking at not only the Austin Manufacturing Academy, but also working with Tesla and their manufacturing program. Tesla, as many of you know, they are hiring students straight out of high school with no experience. They do put them in their manufacturing program. Our hopes is to implement that at the high school level, so those students actually come out workforce ready with those initial certifications and those initial processes and workforce experience, because they will be able to go to the factory and work directly at Tesla prior to being hired after they graduate from high school, if not before they graduate from high school.
So is a PTech program a 4-year program for those high school students?
Yes, ma'am. The BEDC does continue to work with the ISD on other programs as well, including the implementation of an online mentorship program, and they have just started a few months ago doing an actual internship program, which is a paid internship program in partnership with the Bastrop Chamber. And those students are getting, again, that hands-on, in the office, in the restaurant, in the building experience with our employers. And I do want to mention that the mentorship program, the online mentorship program during the pandemic was, it was a pilot program, and it was successful in so many ways. One, getting the student, because a lot of those students that enrolled in that mentorship program were students who did or had signed up for the out-of-school work trade program, and they weren't able to do that during that time. And so mentors hopped online with them, talked them through the different, work environment situations, hey, how you doing today? Kind of just keeping that connection with the students from the outside industry. Again, going through the pandemic and having to switch gears, we did offer the Youth Career Day online thanks to the Rural Workforce Solutions team, BISD, the Chamber, and the City of Bastrop. We collectively put together a program. We had great success. We were a little concerned with that, but we did have great success with that, and we have shared these numbers with you all before, but we had 710 attendees. But to me, the more important part is the actual conversations that took place, as well as the kids who were prepared and submitted resumes for the 52 jobs that were listed.
So how many jobs were actually filled? So resume submitted is less than the posted, but also you don't take everybody who submits a resume.
So that has been one of our challenges, is being able to track that, because the Rural Workforce Solutions team is great about getting them to the employers. The employers are not so great about getting that information back to us.
Yeah, I noticed that when we tried to use it, we didn't have any applicants related to how we did it. So that's why I was asking. It's how many did they actually fill?
Yeah, that's been our challenge for many years, and we've tried every trick in the book to try to get that information back from the employers, but it is tough.
Do we have the names of the resumes that were submitted?
I don't, because they were submitted directly to the Rural Workforce Solutions, but they do.
The Workforce Solutions have the names? Will they share the names?
I'm sure that they would.
Yeah.
The
I mean-
direct route might be the way to.
Right. So it depends on how much privacy they
Yes.
associate with it. It's actually, I would be a little bit surprised if they would volunteer the names, because it
You
was,
didn't get hired,
yeah,
yeah.
it wasn't us that they were engaging. So,
That makes sense.
But I mean, in terms of the employers know who's, and I got a list of who would apply. My problem is, even paying really well, we didn't get any. So as far as that's concerned, so it's that's why I'm curious.
Well, and going back to the privacy situation, that's a big part of why we've never accepted the applications directly as an organization. We always try to let that go through, because they have all of the parameters in place to handle that data in a secure manner.
One thing before looks like you're getting ready, you switch gears to the pandemic, but one thing I wanted to mention, because you were talking about BISD and the chamber, the city of Bastrop's got a wastewater treatment plant, a state-of-the-art wastewater treatment plant that will be finished in the next few months, and we're talking about doing internships, because those are some pretty cool jobs and people could stay right in town. So we're also talking about doing some of those things to get people exposed to not only the science and those are certifications, and it's on the job training, and you can, once you get the certification, you qualify, and it's absolutely a career path that'll be available that wasn't previously available in the city.
So with that in mind, what we're encountering, we're offering, businesses are offering really great job opportunities. It's getting the students to actually act on it. And it's really interesting what they're looking for from a benefit side of it. It's not typical like, hey, it's great that you've got your first job. This is a whole nother generation. And so they're looking for, can you provide me with supplemental child care? Can you provide me with a health club membership? Oddly enough, that's what they're looking for, not necessarily the opportunity to start a career that is sustainable. It's the benefits associated with it. It's a completely different paradigm.
And I think to correlate with what Jen just said is, that kind of that thinking outside the box, that's exactly what we're talking about, is benefits to all of us that we've known, healthcare, IRA, 401k, whatever you want to call it. That's not what today's environment is looking for. They're looking for other things that are today beneficial. Some of the conversations that we've had with a couple of technology companies in the area is, when they're looking at the area, is, do you guys provide like housing vouchers? Can you supplement the employees' rental rate? Things like that. And so it's a different ask. It's a different concept. It's a different thought process of benefits, what that definition is, and how do we approach it, right? So keeping that in mind, so this, oh no. It's still mine. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm not going to, read this verbatim to you, but it's, the drive was always go to college, go to college, go to college. Well, that's not the message anymore, because as we've done that and our baby boomers are starting to retire and move along in their lifestyle, we now have, from a trades environment, we don't have that up and coming workforce to replace them. And let's face it, not everybody is deemed for college material. They don't have the need, they don't have the want, they don't have the drive, they don't have the know-how, they don't have the financials, whatever the case may be, they don't have that. And we have seen a change prior to that, a little bit of reintroducing. I mean, many of the high schools pulled all of the trades programs, whether that be, the home economics class or the shop class or whatever the case may be. All of that got pulled because academics and kind of the computer age started kind of filtering in, and we were not thinking about what fixing the AC unit or being an electrician or a plumber or a seamstress may look like. And so I think we've really seen a big change in the, oh my goodness, we've kind of left out an entire gap of opportunity. So how do we go about that? And so what we're really seeing, and I think kind of the focus of our organization over the last couple of years, is how do we get, as the lower part of this talks about, how do we get people to either be significantly re-skilled or taking what skills they have and upskilling them.
And how do we do that without any kind of higher education here?
Right.
Or certifications or anything?
So, as you can see, I mean, we just kind of talked about this, but these are the jobs that are, I mean, currently out there right now. You've got, electricians, civil engineers, you've got welding, soldering, heating and cooling, obviously the construction. We're in the state of Texas right now, and holy moly, we've got construction going on. Plumbers and pipe layers, pipe fitters, industrial engineers, mechanics, all of those are all really large value needed positions to be filled in the United States right now. So, knowledge gap, right?
Yeah, that's what they're calling the fact that all the baby boomers are taking their experience with them. And there's not enough people these days to replace all of those hardworking baby boomers.
That's right. And so in working with, I'm going to air quote, Project Gummy Bears, or otherwise known as Howard Designs, and the Community Actions Team, we developed the opportunity to rent space within their new facility to teach these types of classes. With ACC, the Rural Workforce Solutions Team, and I want to talk about the Workforce Solutions Team, Rural Workforce Solutions Team. I always get that backwards, and I apologize. But they're an extremely important component to all of this because they have money. And they help us qualify our community that need to be upskilled or reskilled or have an opportunity at all, and they help us get those people qualified to actually be able to attend these classes for free. And that's critical. We don't talk about that enough. They're an extremely important partner in making all of this work. So, ACC, I know we haven't really given an update on where that is and what they're doing. The pandemic has changed their criteria, and so we've been on the hunt for some new space. We believe we have found that space. We are tidying up an MOU to submit to the city here momentarily and get that hopefully in place to be able to offer about 1,200 to 1,600 square feet for them, to also be able to offer some additional classes on top of what we thought we were going to originally, which is great. Those programs will include things like HVAC, plumbing, welding, and the one that's not on here is going to be the construction trade. And again, it's something we've talked about, we've really wanted to implement. It correlates with what Cedar Creek High School already has in place. So those students can literally go from their OSHA certifications that they graduate with as a senior in high school in that construction program and go directly into this ACC program and earn those additional certifications to then be able to go directly into work.
Who is the MOU with?
The city of Bastrop, because it's going to be one of the city's properties. Now, let me clarify, they will also still be doing some stuff at Howard Designs at the Art Foundry. But Community Actions will be doing the majority of the classroom space out there. They just, because of the pandemic, again, their requirements for spacing has changed significantly. The 500 square feet would no longer work. They would end up having to only be able to do 4 to 5 students. And from an economic standpoint, that just didn't work. So we've been looking for new space for them, making sure that we could make something work.
And in case you guys don't know, Community Action, they concentrate on adult continuing education courses such as English as a second language, GED, teaching, QuickBooks, the Microsoft suite. What am I forgetting? They offer a host of different, not certifications necessarily, but
skills.
in order to bring those up to speed so that they can then go on to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah, so they really focus more on almost like support skills, if that makes sense. Providing kind of those daily, you know, if I wanted to be an executive admin, right? Like I could learn the Microsoft suite, I could learn QuickBooks and go in and make good money doing that. And so they focus on a little bit different demographic. And so again, bringing those partnerships of community level challenges as well as the high school challenges into a kind of global, engaging, and continuing education environment. If that makes sense. ACC is also going to be offering some classes in Smithville. We will be working with ACC and Smithville to offset the coordination of those different classes. The other thing that Smithville is going to be doing that we are currently not is some of the healthcare side of things. They are partnering with Towers Nursing Home to teach phlebotomy and to do some CNA classes as well. And we may add those as we go along. And of course, the opening, and you know, putting quotations there, the virtual opening of the Art Institute in our 921 main building. You know, we've continued obviously to have a lot of conversations about them, but as they get into an open campus environment, we really start seeing the students in the community. That's really going to change the landscape of our community as a whole. And I think it's important to understand that they don't just teach art. They teach a lot of graphic design. They teach the media production side of things, website design, gaming, animation, you know, all of those other kind of technical skills that our community and our students can take and do in other jobs across a lot of industries. So I think it's really important to understand that, you know, we're creating that, yes, it's a very creative environment, but it's more than just art.
So I have a question related to the Art Institute because I'm least familiar with it. So do they offer an internship program? Because most of these individuals have to build their portfolio to be able to apply anywhere. It's not training that gets them the job, it's what have you done. I've got instructional designers on my team. I don't hire them for where they went to school, I hire them for their portfolios and what they can do. So do we do we know, do they have an internship program? Do they provide opportunities related to working with the public, doing marketing campaigns, because that's your portfolio, doing web development, or even instructional design? And so that way they're leaving the institute more than with
Yes.
education, right?
Yes, 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 and yes.
Okay.
So a big part of why they chose downtown Bastrop was because of the open creative environment. It got them out of that stale commercial concept that all of their campuses are in, and I don't mean that in a negative way at all, because some of their campuses are beautiful, but they chose this platform and this concept to directly mesh and engage with the community. And so, for example, they immediately started building relationships with BISD. They are currently working with the Hyatt. They are doing everything they can to engage and engulf themselves. They're talking to Tesla. They're talking, they would be more than happy to talk to you and engage with you about what your needs are from a technology company, concept, and from an internship perspective as well. And I'd be happy to introduce you to everyone over there.
Let me answer that from a slightly different perspective. One of their metrics that they keep is how well their students are employed, how quickly they're employed, and they track that, because that's how they attract people to their school, is by saying our graduates are employed within X amount of days, or they've got this kind of success. So as Jean said, the answer to that is yes. Happy to introduce you to Harvey, but specifically a metric that they track is the employability of, when you're done with us, you got a job.
So I don't know if you keep up with the social media and the photography that goes on for the Bastrop Chamber, but Chris White is who does that, and he actually graduated from the Art Institute, and he internshiped with the city of Bastrop. He then went over and internshiped with the chamber and now has been there full time. And so, yes, from a metric standpoint, that is definitely one of the things that they keep tabs on, which helps drive their mission and their curriculum.
Well, I was thinking, especially if we're trying to bring in new employers and things like that, that's a benefit you're offering to the new employer, is we've got resources locally that can support you from a marketing, media, web development, or some other aspect as a benefit to come into the community, based on the fact that we've got a number of these individuals locally. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So workforce training is definitely kind of an incentive that we offer to companies. If they come in and say, hey, we're going to need X amount of employees that do this specific thing, we can work with people like the Art Institute, we can work with ACC to build and develop something very specific. Samsung is a great example that we all use for ACC. They developed a very specific training program on behalf of Samsung that they have implemented in Travis County as well as Elgin through the ACC campuses and the high schools, depending on what level of need they have to develop that workforce. And that is absolutely something that we can do here as well. So again, we continue to work with industry to identify the gaps and the needs. This summer, we did work with restaurant owners who requested assistance in hiring and upskilling workers. We partnered with the Art Institute. They very quickly turned on a dime and created a certification program to try to get as many people educated and ready to go as possible. We reached out to, I believe, 60 restaurants total. I had 5 people restaurant owner operators respond to me, who all said the exact same thing. I could take 10 to 15 people today. So we built the program. We offered the program. Unfortunately, we could not get enough participation to launch the program. On the flip side of that, the Art Institute partnered with the Workforce Solutions team and the Hyatt and built a program specific to the Hyatt, and that program is extremely successful. I don't have the exact statistics on it, but after talking with the general manager at the Hyatt, that program is going very, very well, and they're actually continuing to add some additional training to that program. So we are working on trying to build very specific things to help our employers dive into what the opportunity and options are. But if you can't bring the people and the employees to the table to make that happen, other than, you know, handing out candy and trying to influence people to come in the door, I don't know, you know, we're having a hard time getting people to come in and make those things happen.
Well, and that may be a part of the discussion that's going to happen at the end of this presentation.
Correct.
How do you get participation?
So we're about to go into the second portion of this section. Did you all want to take a break real quick?
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break. All right, we're going to call this meeting back to order. It's 10:36 or something. 10:40. I stand corrected. All right, jump on it. Let's get this moving.
Speak fast.
Well,
Oh, I speak fast, guys.
or there might, you know, just move it along. Thank you.
All righty then, I have my orders. Well, thanks, Gene, you jumped in there. So supply and demand of local labor force, also known as where are the workers? That's okay, you're good. So we've all seen the articles, we've watched the news, we know about all these numbers, right? We've got more job openings than we do people. Don't you dare. Employers are having a hard time filling their slots. The hardest to find workers are home health care aides, restaurant workers, and hotel staff. And in April, 3.5 million workers quit their jobs. Now, the surprising thing is that this was posted August 23rd, 2019. Go ahead. That was before the pandemic. The WHO didn't report that the COVID-19 virus existed until December of 2019. In March 2020, the pandemic was declared, and then the shutdown started. We saw massive layoffs. Texas alone saw a loss of 1.4 million jobs in the spring of 2020. Unemployment rate was at 12.9 at its highest. That's fine. This is a screenshot of Bastrop County's unemployment rate. It comes from a software we use called Jobs EQ. And if you look, you each have a handout. It's a report printed for Bastrop County specifically, and it goes into greater detail about, wages for one, the demographic profile. If you look at page 6, you'll see the wages. You may notice that Bastrop County is paying significantly lower than some of the other areas. Okay, yeah. This just demonstrates what we pretty much already knew. The top two occupations, there you go, thank you, deal with sales and retail related occupations and food preparation, restaurants. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Now this is an industry snapshot, so it's going to be a little different, but it pretty much stays the same. You'll see that our biggest 3 industries are accommodation and food services, retail, and then right in there with it is education. We can also run these reports at the city level, but we didn't think that that would be inclusive enough, so we stuck with the county. They're all about the same no matter how we run them. Okay. So as an effect of what happened with COVID, a lot of people retired earlier than we originally thought they would. Some people moved to be closer to family. Many women and some men became stay-at-home moms, caregivers, teachers. And those like us who had the ability to work from home did so. At one point, they said about half the workforce was working remotely. Women left the workforce at twice the rate as men. We do believe that that's because they became full-time moms, caregivers, and whatnot. Homeschool teachers. Okay, so once the stay-at-home orders and shutdowns began to ease up a little bit, businesses began to reopen at some capacity. By October of 2020, most businesses were back to at least 50% or 75%, really. March 2021, just this year, all remaining restrictions were lifted. And this was in Texas, which tended to be a bit more aggressive than a lot of other states. Go ahead. The industries hit the hardest by the shutdowns, you guessed it, same ones we were already talking about: hospitality, leisure, restaurants, brick and mortar retailers. They couldn't work remotely, and they weren't all called back to work at the same time because they were open at limited capacity. These were one-on-one types of jobs that put people at risk, and then customers also felt at risk, so they didn't automatically come back. So the point is, we didn't go from being off to on. We didn't do this, and we didn't do this. It's kind of like this. It's like we kept trying to get the economy restarted, but it just wasn't working. Now, you're probably asking, Angela, why are you going through this? We've all been through it. Well, I know Gina and I'm pretty sure Janora agrees. There's a couple of reasons. First of all, you need to know where you've been in order to know where you're going. And second of all, you have to identify an issue before you can set about to try to fix it. So we did that quick little recap there to show you how we got to where we are. Yeah, y'all can just read that. Those are staggering statistics.
Can I interrupt here? Because I
Go
want
ahead.
to ask Kevin a question. A lot of the stuff is obvious, and it's never easy to hire people in your industry. But from 2 years ago to today, what's different that you see maybe that we're not noticing? That might not be a fair question because the problem is the people who are sitting at home not coming out to ask you for a job. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest difference for us is we are so much busier than we were this time 2 years ago. We're up 50%. I mean, it's over 2019, even before the pandemic. And it's been, like I say, ever since the snow melted, it has just been record week after record week.
Kind of along Jeff's question, is it pent up, I'm tired of being in my house and I want to get out, so is it your regulars coming more often? Is it people, I'd rather eat at a restaurant in Bastrop than I would go to downtown Austin?
Yeah.
So it's people meeting here from other places?
I really think there are a lot more people that live here than there were this
Just
time in
full-fledged,
2019.
just the growth of the city.
And the other part, for us is people who are new to an area eat out more than those who grew up there. Then they've been there for long periods of time. The longer you've lived someplace, the more likely you are to eat at home.
I mean, how many
And the
times
less
have we...
time you've lived at an address, the more likely you are to be eaten out.
It's the whole blinded by what's in your backyard kind of concept.
I mean, how many people do you talk to, especially as mayor, that, they've been here forever and, well, there's nothing to do here. There's,
Right.
we don't have anything like that. Well, yeah, we do.
Well, it's
right over there.
funny, you guys know my husband was born here in Bastrop, and he talks about people are like, where do you go to eat? And he's like,
I don't go out, especially in those years when he was
Right.
working. Like, I'm working dawn to dark. I don't eat out at a restaurant. You know, now he answers differently, but
But it's not only eating. I just moved
sure.
to Bastrop 2 years ago. I go out because I meet people
You're
in our
exploring.
community.
You're exploring.
Yeah, and also the relationships, some of the, Simply Sweet cupcakes sees me all the time. Yeah. It's that kind of thing. And so you develop a relationship with these businesses. And so therefore, it's a pleasure to sit down or grab something to go.
So it's new locals
It's new locals.
are the
And
drivers.
obviously, the, Tesla construction is having an impact. I don't even see to what extent, because it's hard for me to,
Tell,
right.
their tattoo doesn't show
Yeah,
up under
right,
the
exactly. They don't have like,
black light.
their T-shirts on or whatever.
And I have a little bit different perspective on that too. I think you're seeing more regional travelers come in because
Yep.
they can come over and dine. And I'm going to relate this to where I grew up in far west Texas, where driving someplace for dinner an hour and a half was not out of the norm for us. And I'm seeing it more here. I see it from the rural communities around you are discovering you and visiting here for dinner. And I think you're going to see, as tourism, the tourism industry ramps back up. Texans are looking for in-state experiences. I think those numbers can be supported at the state level by Texans traveling within Texas and staying in rural hotels and trying to experience their own state, and they're feeling safer doing that rather than obviously world traveling, but even so, traveling outside of the state, they're wanting to experience more what's in. So I think you're seeing some
Yeah,
of
and
that.
even those where safety is not a factor, it's the hassle factor. It's, okay, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get on a plane to go to Chicago or, someplace
is
like
it
that.
going to get canceled?
Right.
Well, that was, I was gonna, you might be able to get on it, you might not be able to get home.
You're right.
You got to
Okay,
convert some of those into workers, right? That's the.
well, thank you. That was a good segue. Okay, so a lot of the economists, and I have to say, I bought into this too, when they're offering all the extra federal dollars to people that were out of work, I thought, well, good luck getting those folks to go back, right? Well, go ahead. So just as a recap, the CARES Act, it was expanded. It gave people $600 per week unemployment. It increased the amount of time they were allowed to be on unemployment. Now, later on, it was only $300 weekly, but in June, Texas opted not to continue the federal dollars. So we thought, yay, people are going to go back to work, right? Go ahead. No, the data is showing, or the data are showing that it did not have a significant impact. Had a very minor effect on labor shortages. In fact, 4.3 million people quit their jobs in August of this year. And I liked what the New York Times had to say about it. Go ahead one more time. Research on this question is unambiguous. We don't know what's going on. So, in an effort to kind of do some things I've never done before, and I'm ashamed to say I've never listened to NPR radio, I ran across some things. One was Anthony Klotz, I think is how he pronounces it. Klotz, thank you. And he's a psychologist at Texas A&M. So he was the one that originally dubbed this the Great Resignation. At least that's what he claimed. He says there's 4 main reasons that he sees for people quitting their jobs and not going back to work. Number 1, backlog of resignations. So during the pandemic, people were afraid to quit. Normally you would have, regular turnover, right? Kevin probably knows all about this. You've got, it just happens. It's part of doing business. Maybe people were afraid to do that, so they waited, and now all of a sudden, a bunch of them are quitting at the same time. The employees who were working are probably burned out. Go ahead.
Well, really quick, I'm going to dub in here.
I know you're burned out.
I was just telling Kevin a story, speaking of Texas A&M, one of the longest rolling restaurant bars that is there right across the street from campus, they're so short-handed, and the staff that is left have been the staff that have been there for 20 plus years, and they are reaching this point, and they have a huge game this weekend that for the first time in 40 years, they had to close on Monday and Tuesday of this week so their staff wouldn't quit by Saturday. And it's affecting everybody.
Okay, the next thing he had to say was the pandemic epiphany. People are reevaluating their lives, what makes them happy. They had, I don't know, about a year to sit home and think about it. And they decided, you know what? That job's just not worth the time and effort I put into it, or the customers I have to put up with, or whatever. There's many, many reasons, but that's what they're calling it. And another one is a lot of people still want to be able to work from home, and if they can't, then they feel like they're putting their family at risk. William Spriggs is an economist at Howard University, and he refers to this as the care economy. He says that child care, paid sick leave, and elder care are necessary for a full recovery to happen. A lot of the hospitality and leisure industries have lost jobs to other industries. Women are successfully changing careers to those that are traditionally male-dominated. So they went from maybe waiting tables to warehousing. And, if you go to Amazon in the warehouse, you've got better benefits, better hours. You're not constantly exposed to customers. Just saying, that's a possibility. And finally, Laszlo Bach he used to be the former senior VP of People Operations at Google, and now owns his own human resources company, has his own thoughts. He says employers have to be willing to actually listen to the needs of their employees. What is their schedule like? Are they having to close one night and then reopen the next morning? How long is their commute? Are they driving 30, 45 minutes in? Eventually, that causes burnout in and of itself. These people need to be paid a living wage, he says, and there are some restaurants that are deciding to forego tipping in order to put a 20% fee on the receipt, and that way they can actually pay their employees a better wage, $20 even. And so what he says really is that you just need to ask your employees what you can do for them. What do you need from me? How can I help?
And really quick, I think that ties back into Jen's question during my portion of the presentation is identifying what those benefits, what is the definition of that benefit to these employees today?
It could be different to each employee. Some may need childcare. Some may need a flexible schedule. Okay, this is the fun part. He said not to discount the stress of customers. Hold on just a second. We've all seen on the news people acting badly on flights, right, and getting kicked off. Well, that's gotten a lot of attention, but there's also been some other stuff going on in restaurants and in retail. So, again, edited for time. You may have to hit it.
We have a religious
Not
exemption,
Denny's.
but we just don't want to wear a mask.
You're right to wear a mask at a restaurant.
So
It's not religious belief, though.
it's under the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that we have an exemption, religious exemption.
I quit. What is wrong with you people?
Ma'am, we're not
Roger,
sick.
I'm not working for this anymore. These guys won't put their mask on. I'm sick of feeling like this. Wait, stop.
So during the pandemic, everybody was supposed to be wearing masks, and we were basically asking the people who work in stores and restaurants to be the mask police. That's a lot of stress to put on them when customers are going to behave like that. That was just one example that stuck in my mind. I cannot imagine having to work in that industry right now. So let's just sum some things up. There was an increase in the number of people who moved during the pandemic. The numbers vary, but I did find where they said that 31% of young adults relocated. Now, Kevin, young adults tend to be those that work for restaurants, right? Because they haven't really launched on a real career path yet. So maybe those employees that we can't find right now aren't here anymore. maybe they moved and downsized so that they could afford to be closer to their family. Or I know in California, some people are moving to the Austin area because it's cheaper, but they've decided one person's going to stay home and take care of the kids.
And a lot of those have also turned to moving back home because they now have completely changed the mindset of where they were going and what they were doing. And it's a safe environment to be back home, stable with their mom and dad or their family in any capacity, to try to figure out what the next steps are.
Oh, yeah, and some use the time off to train for a new career. I mean, online schooling became very popular during the shutdown. Personally, I would have gone to school to, you know, be a paralegal or something if I'd had that opportunity. So exactly what Jean was saying, people just reevaluated their lives and what their lives were going to be, so go ahead, and now they're just saying, no, I'm not going back to that. Things are going to have to change. So employees want better wages, health care and or child care, better or safer working conditions depending on the occupation, flexibility. And a lot of those people who were able to work from home enjoyed it, they were productive, and they want to be able to continue to do so at the risk of quitting whatever job they have now and taking another one. So it's not just affecting the hospitality industry. So Jean and I have decided we're going to start calling this a workers' market. It's like a seller's market or a buyer's market. This is a workers' market. They have the power. We're seeing a complete redefinition of expectations in the workforce or workplace. On top of that, there is still a skilled labor shortage. This is not to say that all of those people that used to work at restaurants are now plumbers or HVAC operators. We've still got a shortage with those. And as I showed earlier, the pandemic actually magnified an issue that was already taking place. And we've already attempted to address the labor shortage, at different levels in the nation. I know Jean and I, we've seen in our travels that everywhere you go, somebody's offering a $300, $400, $500 sign-on bonus, all kinds of different perks. It just doesn't seem to be working. 50% more job openings today than there were before the pandemic. It's to the point that workers are just walking away, even without another job lined up. The experts say that traumatic events cause major changes in workforce, and I think we've probably seen that, like after the fires and things like that. And it's a labor shortage, yes, but it's also a labor shift because workers left jobs where they felt like maybe their lives were in danger to go on to other jobs that they felt safer, and often they had better pay and better benefits. So that brings us to, okay, now we've identified the issues, how can we help? The BEDC is happy to collaborate with all of the partners that we already have established. We've got the Workforce Solutions, Bastrop Chamber of Commerce, BISD, whatever, we can reach out to all of them. Locally, we're already seeing restaurants cut back their hours. There's even been at least one closure that I'm aware of. Hopefully it was temporary, but they lost their management and closed.
Well, and many are shifting the way they operate. A lot of the fast food restaurants can no longer support the at counter and the drive-through anymore because it's literally like having two separate kitchen operations, and they just don't have the staff to do so. So, on a national level and a local level, a lot of them are literally just drive-through or pick-up only. They're no longer allowing people to come into the restaurant.
Yeah, I've heard of several of those happening here. And this is true supply and demand at work. I mean, the demand is outweighing the supply, so everybody's offering more per hour. Kevin, you could probably speak better than anybody. Is it working? Okay.
No.
Give us just a moment to wrap this up.
2 hours to get there. That's not
Go ahead. Now, this goes to what we talked about with Jen. She kind of made us think about something. Maybe it's not so much the employees. Maybe we need to talk to the employers. Go ahead. And maybe there's a disconnect somewhere. We've heard stories that people are applying all over town, but they're not getting callbacks. They're not actually getting interviews. And this isn't just in Bastrop. This is nationwide. And there's some theories about that I'm going to hit on one of them here in just a second. So one of the ideas Jen came up with was to maybe go to the high school. And did you know that the age in Texas to work is 14? See? I thought it was 16. Obviously, you probably have to have parental improvement, right? But maybe that's something we can work on. Connect with our local employers. Maybe there's a little bit of education we can do with them. This is my opinion. I think it needs to be just an all-out grassroots blitz. We're going to have to hit everybody. We're going to have to go door to door, make phone calls, do surveys, whatever it takes to find out, hey, where did your employees go? Are they still here? Are they really just home not working? Did they leave? Did they move? Did they change careers? Maybe we're asking for people to come back to work and they're not there anymore. Go ahead. Is that it? That's it. Well, I did a while ago, but yeah, they're definitely somebody that I think maybe they can help us vet the applications. Maybe they can help us figure out if there is a disconnect. And that's the software I was alluding to. We have heard that some corporations are using software that if there is a word that's missing or a word that's in there, it's automatically discounted. And those people may actually be really good employees, but that one word, that algorithm is spitting them out of the system. We don't know that much about it yet.
Yeah. What software are you using, Kevin?
Well, locally, I'm sure you're probably not using one. I said corporation.
No, we're not using it.
So,
Is there any
No, I mean,
employers that you know of that are using software?
oh, I'm sure the more sophisticated ones probably, I mean, you hear about, if they, have this or that, then we don't talk to them, or if they don't have this or that, we don't, if they don't have this qualification or that.
So I think more of the question is maybe not you personally using the software,
Right.
but if you list positions on a place like Indeed or Snag-a-Job or whatever, those platforms have the software. And if they don't fit the exact criteria that he has set, that kicks that person out, and he never even gets to see them.
Yeah, we post on just about everything. And, but, I mean, we talk to just about all comers. Our problem is, people apply and then they don't come. We set up an interview with them and they don't come, or, we, ask them what time they can, come for an interview, and then you don't hear from them again.
Yeah, that probably applies more specifically to jobs that are not in that industry, because we're hearing that
I
the
would
labor
expect
shortage
that
is
somewhere.
everywhere.
Yeah.
So let's say somebody says, we need a bachelor's degree for this position, but I apply, I only have an associate's degree, but I have 15 years experience, which actually, to me, experience sometimes outweighs that extra 2 years of schooling, but because they said bachelor's degree, I'm out. That's what I'm talking about.
But that's life. That's automation. That's on a college application. That's on a job application. That's on a grant application. That's life.
It is, but I think that goes under the category of maybe some things we can talk to the employers about. And really, the conversation Jean and I had with Jen was illuminating. So I was kind of hoping at this point to
I think
The industry, I thought you guys are saying the industry that was most impacted is hospitality and entry-level restaurants. They aren't, nobody's asking for a bachelor's degree.
So I think Jen can speak kind of to the industry standpoint, because we did discuss numerous times that it it's reached all industry, but yes, from when you break it down from a pie shape, yes, those of course are the highest hit ones.
Well,
I mean, Jen can speak from an industry standpoint directly.
Maybe a piece of education to employers about where do you post for what is a part of a solution.
Honestly, though, we concentrated on retail and sales because those are our two biggest. We're very heavy in those industries. It's also where most of our sales tax comes from. So there's a very, that was the reason we focused on it.
So that's my
but
point, and those jobs aren't posted asking for bachelor's
Correct,
degrees.
but we've got the high-tech industry, the biotech industry. Everybody we talk to is looking to hire somebody. And right up there in the top 5 is healthcare.
Sure.
So, it's not just, yes, this is our most important, we've got to do something about it. Anything that we can possibly do, it's pressing, it's urgent, but it's also a bigger picture.
But in healthcare, to Catherine's point, if you have to be an RN, you have to be an RN. And if you're not an RN, you don't get to be an RN. So some of that, if it's weeding out people that aren't qualified for the job.
And part of the industry loss in healthcare is the requirement of masks. Look at the number of people who are walking away from jobs in the healthcare industry because they are required by their employer or by their state government or whatever to wear a mask or be vaccinated or both. And they're walking away, and we're losing those. And it comes down to not necessarily that they're opposed to being told they have to do something that they believe they should have the right to make a decision about. And that is negatively impacting employment across the board. And so I think those are things we absolutely have to look at, is what's the requirement on vaccination. That has hit our nation.
And it's about to get worse. It's about to get worse once the government slams that down our throat again.
Yeah.
So
Actually, Bill, you just hit on something. From my research, it's not, I do believe it's going to get worse before it gets better. And to Janora's point, those people are burned out. They
They're
have
burned
had
out.
to deal with this day in, day out for almost 2 full years.
They've risked their lives voluntarily and not for their paycheck, but because they believed in what they were doing, and now they believe they're being forced to do something they don't believe in, I think is the best way to say it. But those are things we're dealing with. That's not to say that's not really the reason in the hospitality industry. I don't know what the answer is there, but I know prior to COVID, I did a lot of door knocking in other communities and talking to industry leaders, and the number one complaint, across the board in every community, was the lack of interest or commitment by employees. They said, Janora, if you can just find somebody that will show up, we don't even care if they show up on time, if they just will show up to work, we are so grateful to have them come in. The work ethic was not there, and several of the employees, and I mean a lot of them, or employers, said people just don't show up on their birthday. They don't call us, they just don't show up. Or they get sick, they don't call us and tell us they're ill, they just don't come in, and then they may or may not come back. And that was across the board in multiple communities where I visited with industry leaders. Those are their challenges, was the work ethic, if they could find someone to show up at all.
In our BRNE program, pre-COVID, we were hearing the exact same thing here locally. It didn't matter if it was hourly wage or if somebody was working in the life sciences industry. The newer generation seems to just have less of a work ethic than those of us who've been on the planet for half a century.
So let me turn that around on a different perspective. I deal with a lot of individuals coming out of college, and what they're looking for is employees who care about them. And so with the company I work with and for, a lot has gone into recognizing the individual contributions of an individual. And you can do that from a small business perspective, saying, hey, it's your birthday, we're going to give you the day off because you're being proactive. Well, no, oddly enough, it's how, so they're actually, basically, or, you know what, I understand that you have a major milestone coming up. Hey, let's talk about what we can do to accommodate you. So with that in mind, I think it's important that it's not just a work ethic. The generation that I'm seeing is more interested in, do you care about me? And oddly enough, that's a piece of it. So I don't know about what you're seeing, but in tech, we're putting a lot of effort into saying, we're recognizing your contributions. Even our review process has changed dramatically about highlighting successes, getting them visibility, ensuring the fact that they've got growth patterns so that they stay, because it's really easy for us to bring in an associate, and Accenture, for instance, will come in and offer double their salary. Oh, in a heartbeat. But Accenture doesn't pay right now a lot of attention to them as an individual, okay? That's likely to change because they're going through the same thing, okay?
Yeah, let me call your attention to the most disturbing number that I saw perusing this demographic profile. Page 3 of the economic overview.
You found the most disturbing number?
Well, it is. I mean, it is to me. And Bastrop, the labor force participation rate.
Where are you?
It's the third purple bar, the first line after that. The state average is 64.5, which is, you know, a percent or so, a little bit above the national average. But Bastrop County is 59.1. That's a big number. And if you go back and look, okay, well, is it under 18 and over 70s? It's not. Our percentages are about the same as the state on that. So, so we have a local problem. Right, exactly, it's not. So we have a local problem, you know, over and above the generation, over and above the, you know, the state averages. I mean, that right there, that 5% or so, and that's about 10,000 people. I mean, if we added half that number to the workforce, think about, we'd be in a lot better shape.
Well, and I think it's important to understand and go back to the comments of, you know, for our community, right? So we gave you guys the big picture. Now we're defining who we are and what our needs are locally, right? And you pointing that out, I think really kind of, right, kind of pinpoints the situation. You know, us as a community, we rely extremely heavily on our services industry, whether that be retail, restaurants, whatever. And for us to, as we are growing in population, it's going to require additional service support. That means additional retail and restaurants. That means additional service industry opportunities, right? If we can't keep the doors open to the places that are here today, where are we going to be tomorrow? And, you know, I think that's why a lot of what Angela's presentation and my presentation kind of went to is those support mechanisms, right? We hope to always have people that will go on to, you know, the high-tech industry or the semiconductor industry or whatever, but our core mechanism to function as a community is the service industry. That is that's our backbone. That's what we have developed as a community over the last 10 or 15 years. So how do we support that today to keep people like Kevin open and neighbors open and the retailers that are really struggling?
So if you turn the page to page 4, from my perspective, what is very telling is homeowner vacancy 1.4%, rental vacancy 3.4%, which is less than half of the state and well below the country, which means there's not housing. They don't have a place to live, and they don't have a place they can afford to live. And so wherever they've found a place to live, that's where they're working. You know, to the folks that may, Janora mentioned people are looking for regional experiences. The folks that will drive to have dinner at Piney Creek Chop House so they can check out the Copper Shot Distillery for after dinner drinks are not going to drive that far to come to work
for 7 shifts, right?
I was wondering if anybody here is aware of it, but, you know, on a lower level of entry-level jobs. We've all seen, everywhere you go in town, help wanted, everywhere. You can't have missed the sandwich boards at Buc-ee's, you know, $15 an hour starting. 401k, 2 weeks paid vacation, insurance, and that's probably for, you know, someone who's going to be cleaning the bathrooms, which they do on a regular basis, and wiping off the gas pumps. You're not going to do much better than that for a walk-in-the-door job, and I'll show up. How are they doing? Because they don't seem understaffed to me, maybe a little bit.
Actually, they churn people very quickly because of the working conditions. They don't like the management. They don't like treated how they are. My daughter works at one of the vet clinics in town as a veterinarian. They compete against Buc-ee's for salary, but they come to work at the clinic because they are treated better. And so they'll actually take a pay cut to do that, but they're hopping based on how they're being treated. Not for income.
It's yeah, it's true. I mean, I've heard that about, you know, we've had, of course, employees come and go, you know, from there, and employees go to there. And yeah, it's like, it's very rigid. It's very, and, you know, they do a good job of, you know, you get greeted when you come in. You know, I know people all the time about it, but honestly, I've never fired anybody because they didn't do it. And yeah.
Well, and I don't think that, it doesn't appear that their onboarding and company ethic is show up when you want, we're just glad you came today. If you're late for your shift, you're out, and we'll find somebody who will come to your shift.
And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we've, through our conversations with lots of industry, is kind of all comes back to kind of one explanation, which is employees are not willing to go through the grind of the day-to-day, whether it be, you know, at a very structured Buc-ee's environment or, you know, a Whataburger where, again, it's got the corporate structure. They would much rather, instead of making $15 an hour and having to go through the grind and not having a set schedule, to take a job paying $10 an hour where they work Monday through Friday for 8 to 5 and have a whole lot less responsibility. And so that's the grind aspect of it has been kind of the comment that's been made to both of us over the last year and a half.
Sounds like, unfortunately, a lot of this we can't, I can imagine, do anything about. You know, it's a combination of cultural shifts and changes and between employers and employees and their expectations. You know, we can't go around to every individual employer and go, hey, treat your employers nicer. You know, it's not going to happen.
What do they refer to that as, a culture gap? So things are completely different now, and that's what Jen was talking about. They just want to be treated better. Well, aren't we hearing that, like millennials and that generation, they're more about experiences than they are about owning stuff? Doesn't that kind of go along with the same way? They care more about how they're treated than they do about the money they're making.
Yeah.
It's a culture shift.
Definitely, and also, you know, that's the generational thing. I mean, this, you know, my growing up, I mean, when you're 14, you're starting to think, you know, how am I going to earn enough money to get a car?
Right.
You know, I got to have my license the day I turn 16. I've got to be driving my car.
And they are not like that.
They don't care. My kids don't. I have a 17-year-old.
That's
car-
because
no,
mom and
a
dad
car is
have really
stress.
nice cars.
Yeah.
Mom and dad have really nice cars, and they take them everywhere. Why do they need to drive?
Right.
Exactly.
And so, you know, I ask my kids all the time, like, you know, don't you want anything? You know, they don't, you know, it's like there's, you know, they're learning to do with less, I think this generation is. And they have lots, obviously, because, you know, we're a prosperous society and all that kind of stuff. We don't have a lot of, but even the things that you would think that, you know, anybody growing up would want, you know, I want my own place. I want my own, no, they don't. They don't care.
Those things scare them because their responsibility. That's
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what we're hearing.
They want freedom. They want, you know, they
Work-life balance.
Right.
all
They
that
want
stuff.
the
But
the option to do nothing.
back to Jeff's point, because this is an awesome conversation, but from an EDC standpoint, we really need to have a what tangible things can we do? And that's why I was trying to draw focus to housing, workforce housing, pedestrian shed, workable, being able to walk to work or whatever. Do we offer incentives for that? Do we, and you know, the whole affordable housing, Section 8, people's heads blow up. Really, workforce housing means a place that workers can live. You know, so
Right,
do we call it something different? Do we encourage those developments? In these small lots in the industrial park, do we rethink having a portion of the lots and encourage folks to, you know, is there a set of tiny, I'm just being crazy, is there tiny homes because they're backed up to houses in Tahitian Village and and they can walk to a work, or they can work from home because there's fiber and they have better connectivity in the industrial park than they have anywhere else if they're wanting to work from home anywhere. So the philosophical and how we've all raised our kids and no good deed goes unpunished is interesting, but to Jeff's point, I really think we need to focus more on what are the types of things that we can do.
I've got one spitballing outside the box idea, just discussion about cars and kids not wanting to get their driver's license. Those electric Bastrop little taxi sort of things. What if we were to pay for them to take kids to work that don't have a license?
We
know.
don't have to pay them. They'll pick them up and take them to work for free.
So it already exists. Okay.
Yeah.
I see them going
Carts
down my street all
now,
the time.
like,
I thought
you know,
it
the bus
cost
stop
something.
is really the thing of the past. Even Carts has come to an on-demand, and they work 7 to 7 Monday through Friday, and eCabs is now working mid-afternoon to late evenings from Thursday through Sunday. So transportation, for the most part, and even to Mr. Gossett's point, there are some Uber opportunities, you know, even here in Bastrop.
The Rural Workforce Solutions will also, if we're working with them for a specific employer or situation, they will also supplement transportation fees as well.
But to Jeff's point, if he's on the EDC and doesn't know all of those programs that exist, maybe that's an action item that we can take, is to publicize that and maybe make sure that the employers know that those programs exist and how we can help them, so that they can say, hey, we really care about you. We want your mom and dad to know that you're safe when you're coming to work, and here's a methodology for you for transportation. So that's a pretty easy, cost-free thing for us to do with awareness.
The idea of free transportation to your employer and back would be wonderful, because it eliminates that no gas, no car, no insurance or
No
anything.
parking.
Yeah, I like the idea of tiny homes because they're affordable, or even rental, right? That's what I believe Elon Musk is doing for the Tesla folks, right? He's creating his own community for them to make it affordable and it's quick. But the idea is, when I lived in Oregon, in Portland, Orenca Station actually developed around that idea of the fact that you do not need to leave your immediate community. You do not need to buy a car. You do not need to do anything. We'll provide transportation. You need a grocery store or something that they can get to easily. And essentially the affordability of living in Orenco Station and working there. You didn't leave the community, basically. So that was the idea behind it, and it was successful.
And I think something the board has recently voted favorably was funding the broadband, or X amount of dollars towards a broadband feasibility study, which does, in my, and this may just be me, but for, and Mayor, I hope this sort of addresses your concern about the accessibility to Wi-Fi and being able to work from home. To me, it makes sense to make the community broadband accessible, or to have that rather than just locate it in a concentrated area in an industrial park. And I think...
I don't argue with that at all, absolutely. But the reality is what we're funding is a feasibility report that overall the market hasn't addressed the dead spots, because they're driven by how many customers do they have. The feasibility report, it's excellent that we're funding that, but that's not a right-of-way fix, and the fiber's located in
the industrial park right now. So that is immediately available, shovel-ready. That was really the point I was making.
And I agree with that for businesses. The housing issue in an industrial park concerns me as an economic developer, the safety side of that.
I, I understand, and I'm not saying it's an easy solution. I'm saying the 12 I'm looking at the Exhibit A, the 12.6 acre has some topographic challenges, and Lot 4 and Lot 8 back up to houses. So I'm just saying, maybe it's a horrible idea. I'm just saying, if we're wanting to do some out-of-box thinking, let's do some out-of-box thinking.
One thing I was looking at on the, I totaled up all the population between 18 and 65, I think is where I stopped. And there's about 43,000 is what that comes up to in that column there. We're back on page 3. And we have 38,000 workers. So that's about 5,000. That's about 5,000 people that are of working age that aren't working. I mean,
we keep coming back to that 5,000.
Right. How much would it cost to contact those people and find out what, and let them know about opportunities, let them know about, I mean, those are people who already live here. They have a place to live. I don't know what would that look like? How would you even get that list?
Are they?
We don't know.
Are they taking
Could we
care
just
of
learn
adults
about
or
them?
taking care of kids, and they're not really
and that
looking
could,
for jobs?
Right. It could be a survey.
Yeah.
It could be a survey that
That's
also, imparts information to those people.
You're exactly right.
And I think part of the answer to that.
That would be a pretty cheap thing
Yeah.
to do, I would think, for 5,000 people.
I think part of the answer to that, Kevin, and I may be wrong, but I believe it's because there's regional competition. They may not be working in Bastrop, but are they working in other communities? Because if you look at regional, there's overlap from our rural neighbors. We're all competing for the same target market of workers.
So this says
No.
this says
Right,
they're
this is
working in
pop-
Bastrop County.
Yeah, that can't be.
I don't think
because-
that they don't. Well, they wouldn't know.
Right.
Okay.
So I think these are just people that live in Bastrop County who aren't participating in the labor market, any
Yeah.
labor market. So, to me, that's our.
Right, because they're
That's-
getting a W-2
That's
or
our
they're
target
not,
market,
right?
right there.
And Kevin, if you're that interested in it, I can not only run this on a city level, but I can also do the BISD. I set up the GIS shapefiles. What? Oh, the boundaries, yeah. I know the county, we're looking at Elgin, we're looking at Smithfield, who knows? I would like to get more specific to the city, but when I looked at those numbers, I couldn't get the math to work. There's too many people driving into Bastrop to work, and it was skewed.
Because there's no place to
Right,
live.
right. How many of our local government and school employees and police don't live here? They come from somewhere else because they can't afford it.
So that's what you're finding as well.
That's true, yeah, definitely. But like I say, there's 5,000 that do live here that aren't working anywhere.
That's why you keep going
Right.
back to this page.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why
Yeah.
are you not working?
We can do both. I don't see any reason why we can't support, workforce housing and try to figure out why we don't have a better participation rate in the labor market.
Right, because I like that idea, because we're going to identify what we're not offering.
Root cause,
Childcare is
yeah.
coming to mind. So if I'm staying home and not working because I can't get childcare, that's it. Or I can't afford childcare because it blows out my salary. But we would pick that up in a survey or something else. I don't have a car. I can't get into town. So that would say public transportation. All these things that could come out of a study. I would touch the 5,000 because we compete for those heads, and then find out what their reason is.
Yeah. Well, and we're a rural community. That some folks drive into Bastrop because they're living on family property, or they don't want to live in town. And if there was housing built for them, they're not going to live there because they want to live out. Not everybody, right? Not everybody fits neatly into one single box.
There's also incredible expansions along 20, 21. The number of mercados that are forming and opening up on the highways in the rural area are drawing the people
They're
who would
taking
come in.
labor too, yeah.
I think there's a considerable amount that conducts life in Spanish that we don't touch in any way in the city of Bastrop with respect to this.
Excellent point.
And when you look at the demographics are not true either, because Hispanics don't necessarily identify themselves as Hispanic. They'll also identify themselves clearly as Americans and or white, not for any other reasons other than that's the way they are and think they are, which is true. So again, a lot of people believe marking Hispanic or Latino means that you're a Mexican. Well, a Mexican's a different thing.
That's right.
You know, so that's a very high complexity thing that these demographics don't show. But we do know there's an incredibly large population of Latino, Hispanic, Mexican Americans that are living in the area and growing substantially. And these mercados that are opening along the ways are also employing a lot of people. So that's a whole nother branch that we know we don't reach out to very well. And I think if we did more in the Spanish communities, we would find more, hopefully more opportunities for people to join. It doesn't mean, you know, you don't speak English, you don't work here. I mean, I've been all over the world and I've seen this differently. A lot of visual manufacturing or visual processes make a long way to improve the work environment. Exactly. So I think that branch is still missing from outreach.
There are some economists that would actually say you're on the right track. They're saying that's the answer to the labor shortage.
I think we've identified maybe some steps that we can move forward. If you would put a summary together of some of the practical steps that we could do as a BEDC addressing some of these very concrete issues, whether it's the demographics that Bill has pointed out, whether it has to do with a survey to identify what are some of the needs, those social programs that can support workforce development. You know, if we could kind of look at those, because those are the things that we're charged with providing in a community for the quality of life and for the economic vitality, then I think we can go from there. We can put a project plan together to either look at some of these deeper or to begin thinking about what are those questions on a survey that will really provide us the information that we need. I mean, that alone to me, as I'm sitting here thinking about the survey, that takes some real thought about what are the questions. And that in itself is a project.
Well, questions are one thing, and then reaching them and getting the feedback is a whole nother mountain to climb.
It is. And then, you know, as we were sitting here, I was thinking, you know, the survey, you reach out, but I'm just also thinking in terms of social media and networks, are we really utilizing them to provide the best information to the community for them to have the awareness of what we have? I think an example is, do people know about the transportation opportunities available? So looking at that, because those networks can be a powerful way, and it doesn't take much to increase the numbers of your networks. They kind of exponentially explode. As I'm sitting here listening to all of this, you know, I do this all the time. Who knew? You know, that's a question that pops into my mind all the time. Who knew? Because I didn't hear it. It wasn't out there. Sometimes you have to put it out there repeatedly before someone notices it. So just even thinking about what are the campaigns? What are the PSAs? What are the campaigns that could make the community more aware of I think there's some concrete things we can actually do that are practical. But I think this has been a great conversation.
I'd like to throw out as another organization that we already have a partnership with, but that we could really leverage is the Community Action. Because those are folks that are, when I talk with Dale about it, it's a lot of, the kids are maybe getting tutoring and mom and dad are learning different skills or improving their English, and those are folks who are already taking steps to get engaged. So rather than, some folks are going to be hard to find, so we ought to really utilize folks who are already in the system and see if, to Jen's point, ask them what are the barriers. You're certainly taking steps to take care of some barriers, but what are the other barriers, and is there an opportunity for us to help?
Okay, well, that kind of brings me to my next question. We had, as staff, had discussed the possibility of bringing together a, what would you call this, a group of people that have some interest, Community Action, Workforce Solutions, BISD, the chambers, maybe the county, Bastrop County Cares, all of these organizations that have the same general goals in mind, and use, like Workforce Solutions, they have a lot of abilities to help, but they just don't tell their story very loudly. We can absolutely help them with that. So should we bring everybody together in one room? Is that our next step? Or do we form a committee, just staff and a couple of board members to help us? Or how big do you want to go?
First things first, put a summary or a list together of concrete action items. Let's take a look at them. I think they're all too much to tackle, but maybe we look at one or two of them. I would even narrow down the things you're going to talk about when you bring a large group together so that you can really dig deep and come out with a plan. Speaking in generalities and having the same conversation with a larger audience at this point, when we've already identified some practical things that we can do as a BEDC, there are other things out there that we can't do as a BEDC. Let's focus on what it is we can do. Let's identify which ones we want to do, and then put a project plan together to accomplish that.
Totally agree with you. And the other thing we might do is, of those organizations that you talked about including in the group, maybe we have very specific, what workforce things are you already doing? Because getting a group of people together for them to go, we're already doing that, we're already doing that, it may well be what we're really looking for is it's a communication, and that, so I would have some individual conversations before I got them all in a room. That's a group of people that are in a lot of meetings and will tell you we already have a plan for that. So,
and kind of to coincide with that is, at one point we just, I guess about 6 months ago, we had started conversations on developing a workforce coalition. Again, very quickly gets out of hand when you start bringing people to the table. So I think I could probably speak, I know at least on staff's mindset is, we don't want to do anything on behalf of this community to just check a box. If we don't have a way, as the mayor said, a tangible way to supply an option or opportunity, we want to do something that is constructive and we get results out of, that is beneficial to the people who are involved and engaged.
Okay, onward. Thank you for all the work you put into that. I think this is great. I think it should be posted on our website somewhere, just as information for the community, anybody looking at that data, because it takes a lot to pull that data together, and if you've done it, nobody else should have to go out there and do it for themselves. So, number 3, development and agreement between BDC and the City of Bastrop executed on 6/28/2013, an amended agreement executed 11/25/2013. Janora, you want to give us a snapshot, please?
The current agreement was signed in 2013 between the city and the EDC, and I believe it was actually came from the Jamco project. And there are some components in there. One, sidewalks are not required. TIA was not required at the time, but it could be in future developments, and that's where some of the confusion in the park referencing phases. In phase one, in the agreement addresses where Jamco and where current locations in the park already have businesses located, and phase 2 through 6 then referenced the rest of the park. Some of the confusion comes in with phases because on the CAD, phase 1 is different than our terminology of phase 1 or the EDCs in the cities. And then phase can also address specific projects or businesses and their phase of development. So, Mayor, I believe it was you that in the last one of our meetings asked that staff work towards removing reference to phases for the park. So what we have discussed or what was mentioned to you, to the board in previous meetings, is that the agreement either needs to be considered complete because, quote unquote, phase 1 of the park is drawing near to completion. Do you want to amend the agreement as a board with the city? And how do you want to amend that? And I think Mr. Gossett has some ideas about that and feelings. Mr. Gossett, may I ask your input on this? Or I hope your buried head is not, because I'm confusing the issue.
No, just, we've been round and round on it for so long again that we haven't moved forward, and, you know, I think we've talked about it enough, but what you've said is what eliminating the phases is key, but I believe it just takes a group of people to sit together between the EDC and the city and just draft a new agreement or draft an addendum. I mean, it's just, that's kind of where we're at.
I'm not trying to make it way more simpler than it needs to be, but is there a reason that this can't be, this is the plan for the rest of it, and this is an attachment, and we take, that's the amendment to the agreement, and take that to council?
No, the agreement has all the components in it that stop at phase 1 and don't continue to phase 2s and 3s and so forth.
Okay.
If we could look at the park as a whole rather than as phases, is that what I think that's...
Yeah, ultimately that's what needs to happen, is that we reached a point where it was designed as phase 1 and then things got left off for phase 2, phase 3 and so forth. And so really it's at the point where phase 1 is or isn't complete, and the covenants that are in there were never addressed on how to extend through beyond into the other phases. And I think the intention is that, like you said, it is one industrial park. It should be one industrial park and should be taken as such. And I think it's a matter of just cleaning up that documentation to then bring that forward as a cleaned up version. But I think it is mutual. I think it's with the city and the EDC, which are the signing parties, to come to that conclusion.
And I think you just referenced the covenants, and who recognizes the covenants, how are they recognized, and how would that take place? What does that look like moving forward? Mm-hmm. Correct? Okay. So what is the board's pleasure? To amend the agreement and have actual conversation and some dialogue with both parties addressing this and what's the benefit? Or do you want to stay with the phased approach of 2 through 6 and how we address that? So, Mr. Gossett, would that be a good assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been clear about getting rid of the phases. But I thought I remembered last time Trey spoke on the subject was the current agreement is fine into the southern end of the park, we'll call it. And we just need to, clean up a few things if that's the case. And obviously we need a plan for the rest of it, which we have. So yeah, I think it could be a pretty short meeting to go with what we've got and say, okay, what needs to change to apply it to the whole thing and be done with it.
And the application is basically just changing what we call the property. If we are uniform in addressing the different pieces as the same piece, correct? Because it is an active contract, it is still good.
Correct.
It still does apply. We don't need to go into it and change it. I don't see where we want to change different pieces of it. But yes, we have one piece of property. It all should be identified with one name throughout the entire document.
And consistent zoning, I know that was one of the issues we wanted
Right.
to make sure
Cleaning
that
up the zoning
the
is
park is
part of
all
it.
EC rather than EC and P2, and that's where we're working towards with this zoning concept scheme that we presented recently.
You could start by just going through and redline and fix the names of the property.
Okay.
That'd be a great starting point. If there's anything else in the contract that anybody sees that they want to address, then we need to address those individual pieces of the contract. But as far as I know, it's a current contract that's good to go, but we just need to identify the property as one name.
I wouldn't pursue it as phase one and phase two. It's just one set of property, and then try and clear the phase one, and then it applies to the industrial park.
So,
And this map covers everything, right?
yes, that map does. The existing map in the exhibit with the agreement does not.
And that's why you'd update that as well.
Correct. And so, I mean, currently, right now, according to the agreement, this whole entire section that we are currently rezoning, as well as the two upper northwestern properties, are not part of the agreement. And so we want to make sure that we literally pull all of that into one. We're rezoning it. We're platting out the rest of the infrastructure and evaluating that. We just want to make sure that everything that is incorporated in the agreement today, from some of the leeway aspects as an organization in partnership with the city, that those overlay onto the remainder of the industrial park. We remove the phase aspect of it, and it is the industrial park.
I think that's the cleanest way forward. And the hardest part is trying not to write it to address prior things that no one cares about.
That's right.
Write it for the way the industrial state should be from now on and going forward.
That sounds like you know what to do with that.
So would you all, as the board, consider that an amendment to the existing agreement? And are you giving staff permission to move forward with rewriting the language? And do you want that to come back to you all? Like, just kind of give us that process.
It'll definitely
please.
come back to us. We're directing you to do the cleanup on those 3 items that we just talked about. Then it's coming back to us to take a look at. If you would, redline them so we can see what those changes are. Don't just slide them in and we guess what it is that's been changed in a 20-page document, and address the new map. Connie's absolutely right. It goes back to council. They will or will not accept it.
Yeah, so it might be a good idea to, if there's any question with staff, to check with city staff and make sure you're in alignment.
Yeah, you're always best off when your board has approved it and city staff's recommending it. You're going to tend to have a little easier conversation at council. And if those two things can't happen, that's fine too. You still have a conversation at council. Yeah, exactly. Somebody wants this, somebody wants that. How are you guys going to vote?
Yeah, we're fixing the document according to the way we think we would like it to move forward. Does that mean that's the last step? No, that's the first step. Okay. No. All right. So I think we have come to the end. We don't need an executive session. We didn't have anything to discuss in detail about MOCA. We have a meeting on the 10 days from now. If anybody has an agenda item that they want to throw on, we're working on that agenda now. So with that, I think we can pretty much conclude this workshop.
Motion to adjourn at 11:52.
Second.
Done.